That night, I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just watched while betrayal unfolded right in front of me. They thought my silence meant defeat. But silence is only calm before the storm, and by morning, the man who betrayed me wished I had screamed instead. Before I tell you how karma spoke louder than I ever could hit, like share and subscribe, I've always believed silence has its own kind of strength. Some people shout to be heard. I've always preferred to let my actions do the talking. Maybe that's why, when everything fell apart, I didn't say a single word. I just stood there, watching the life I built slowly turn into a stranger before my eyes. Back then, everything felt calm. My world looked picture perfect from the outside, the kind of life people scroll past on social media and think, they've got it all. I had a career I was proud of, a partner I trusted more than anyone, and a best friend who'd been by my side since college. Alina and Ronan, my constants. My chosen family. We had dinners that stretched late into the night, laughter that filled the room, plans for trips we'd probably never take. And I remember thinking, maybe this is what peace feels like. But peace, it's a fragile thing. It can crack quietly, without you even noticing. I started to feel it, the shift, the small pauses between her sentences. The way her phone stayed face down a little too often, the way Ronan stopped meeting my eyes when we talked. It wasn't dramatic, just like a song slightly out of tune. You tell yourself you're imagining it. You convince yourself trust is stronger than doubt. I wanted to believe that. I really did. Sometimes she'd say she was working late. Sometimes he'd say he had a meeting across town. And somehow, their timelines always fit together too neatly. My mind would whisper things I didn't want to hear. But love makes you blind in ways logic never could. So I stayed quiet. I told myself, no proof, no problem. But the truth doesn't need proof to exist. It just waits for its moment to be seen. One night I looked at Alina, laughing across the dinner table, her eyes glowing in the candlelight, and something inside me cracked. Not loudly, just enough for me to feel it. That gentle peace I'd been living in. It wasn't peace at all. It was the calm before a storm I never saw coming. And when it hit, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't ask why. I just listened and let silence remember everything they thought I'd never find out. It's strange how easy it is to mistake routine for trust. You tell yourself everything's fine, because that's what love is supposed to sound like. Quiet, steady, ordinary. But the truth? The truth doesn't always come crashing down. Sometimes it slides in quietly, one small inconsistency at a time. After that night at dinner, I started noticing things I'd never paid attention to before. Alina's laughter started sounding rehearsed. Her goodnight kisses felt distracted. She'd hold me, but her eyes wouldn't hold mine anymore. I'd wake up in the middle of the night to find her scrolling through her phone, smiling faintly at a message she wouldn't let me see. When I asked, she said it was work. I wanted to believe her. I really did. Then there was Ronan, my brother in everything but blood. He started showing up less, and when he did, he looked nervous, jumpy. He'd talk fast, change the subject if Alina came up or suddenly need to check his phone. But the strangest part wasn't the lies, it was how comfortable they seemed telling them. As if my faith was their safety net. As if my silence gave them permission. I started testing them in small ways. Mentioning plans that didn't exist. Pretending I'd be out of town when I wasn't. Watching how they reacted. Every time, their stories lined up perfectly, too perfectly. It was like watching two dancers rehearsing a routine, so practiced they didn't even realize they were performing. And I just played my part, smiling, listening, acting like I didn't see the cracks forming beneath our feet. But inside, something darker was waking up. A cold awareness that the people I loved most were slowly writing a story without me in it. Still, I said nothing. Maybe because I wanted to see how far they'd go. Maybe because I wasn't ready to destroy the illusion just yet. You see, when someone lies to you, the first time hurts. The second time stings. But by the 10th, it just becomes noise and you start saving your silence for the moment it will matter most. I told myself, If there's a truth waiting to be found, I'll let it come to me. And it did. In a way I could never forget. It was a Thursday night, nothing special, just another day that started like every other. I remember because I wasn't supposed to be home early. A client dinner got canceled last minute, and for some reason, I didn't call Alina to tell her. Maybe it was instinct, or maybe some part of me already knew the truth was waiting for me behind that door. When I reached the apartment, the lights were low, soft music humming from the living room. For a second, I smiled. It felt warm, romantic even. I thought maybe she'd planned a surprise, but as I stepped inside, something felt wrong. There were 2 glasses of wine on the table. One lipstick stain, one not. A man's jacket, not mine, hung carelessly over the chair. Then I heard it laughter. Her laughter, the kind one used to live for. But it sounded different this time. Softer. Secretive. My heartbeat slowed, not sped up. A strange kind of calm settling in, the kind that comes right before everything shatters. I walked down the hall, each step heavier than the last. My hand hovered on the doorframe. For a moment, I thought, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's an explanation. But deep down, I already knew. I always did. And then I saw them. Ronan, Alina, together. Close. Too close. Their faces turned pale the moment they saw me, but I didn't move. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just looked at them, really looked. The betrayal wasn't loud. It was quiet, ordinary, devastatingly real. Ronan opened his mouth first, trying to speak. Alina covered herself with a blanket, whispering my name. But the truth was already louder than anything they could say. I didn't want answers anymore. Answers couldn't fix what they'd broken. So, I set my keys on the counter. Not a slam, just a soft, final sound that seemed to echo through the entire room. Then I turned around and walked out. No goodbye. No confrontation. Just silence. That silence followed me down the elevator, out into the night, into the car, into the darkness that felt endless. That night, I didn't say a word, because some betrayals don't deserve your voice, only your absence. I don't remember starting the car. I just remember the sound of the engine, the faint vibration under my hands, and the way the city lights smeared into streaks of gold and blue through my windshield. My mind was blank, but my chest felt like it was collapsing inward, like my heart had forgotten how to beat right. The night was heavy. The kind of silence that hums louder than sound itself. I drove with no destination, just movement. Maybe I thought if I kept moving, the truth wouldn't catch up to me. The road stretched endlessly ahead. But every streetlight I passed felt like a heartbeat, steady. Cruel, reminding me I was still alive when I didn't want to be. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Her name flashing again and again. Alina? I couldn't bring myself to answer. What could she say? What words exist to clean a wound that deep? After a while, I turned the phone face down. Her voice messages came through anyway. The sound of tears, pleading, panic. I deleted them without listening. Somewhere on the outskirts of the city, I pulled over by an overlook. Below me, the world looked calm. Tiny cars moving like fireflies. People living their lives, unaware that mine had just split in 2. I sat there for hours, staring at nothing, trying to breathe through the ache that kept rising like a tide. I thought of Ronan, the man I called brother. Every conversation, every secret we shared, now felt poisoned. I thought of Alina's laugh, her promises, her I love yous. Funny how words can mean everything one day and nothing the next. I wanted to scream, to throw something. But I couldn't. The silence had settled too deep inside me. It wasn't numbness. It was something else. Something colder. A kind of focus I hadn't felt before. That's when I realized I wasn't broken, just emptied. And in that emptiness, something new was forming. Clarity. I didn't need to chase revenge. I didn't need to shout. The truth was already louder than any anger I could express. So I sat there under the quiet sky, letting the world spin without me, and whispered to myself I said nothing tonight. But silence will speak for me soon. When dawn finally broke, I wasn't the same man who had driven into the night. Something inside me had shifted. Not anger, not grief, but purpose. I didn't want chaos or confrontation. I wanted something far colder, cleaner. I wanted truth to do what fury never could. Ronan thought he'd played me. What he didn't realize was that I'd built the very ground he was standing on. The business we ran together, every deal, every investor, had my name quietly written in the foundations. He was the face. I was the spine. And while he'd been busy betraying me, he'd also been leaving a trail of lies for me to follow. That morning, while he was probably still reeling from guilt and fear, I sent a single email. Just one with every document, every proof of the financial manipulations he'd hidden from our investors. Numbers don't lie. People do. Within hours, the news spread like wildfire. The same people who used to shake his hand now wanted to tear his name off their ledgers. I didn't stop there. I forwarded another message, this time not to a boardroom, but to Alina. Screenshots, pictures, conversations. All the little side affairs Ronan thought he'd buried. I didn't need to tell her a thing. I just let her see who she'd really chosen. They both fell in silence, the same silence I once lived through. But theirs wasn't peaceful. It was the silence of realization, of losing everything in one breath. Ronan called me again and again. First pleading, then threatening. I never answered. Alina tried to long messages, guilt-soaked apologies, promises that meant less than the air they were spoken into. I let every word go unread. By morning, his reputation was gone. His investors withdrew. His name was dragged across every financial headline, Alina. She disappeared from the city, like a shadow retreating from daylight. People asked me later if I felt good, if revenge satisfied me. It didn't. Satisfaction wasn't what I wanted. I wanted stillness, balance. I wanted them to understand what silence really meant. And they did. Because by the time the sun rose that morning, my silence had become their punishment, and their regret was the only sound left. It didn't take long for the storm to reach me. By the second day, Ronan came crashing through the doors of my office, face pale, eyes burning with panic. His perfect world had collapsed overnight, and he was desperate for someone to blame. I remember sitting at my desk, calm, almost detached, as he stood there, broken, trembling, and furious. "You ruined me," he shouted. His voice cracked halfway through the word like it couldn't hold itself together anymore. "You think you're righteous? You think you're better than me?" I looked up slowly. There was no anger in me left to give, just a tired kind of clarity. "No, Ronan," I said quietly. "I don't think I'm better. I just remembered who I was. And you forgot who you were," he tried to explain, to twist the truth into something softer, easier to swallow, that it was a mistake. That Alina came to him first, that he didn't mean to hurt me. Every sentence felt like an insult to what we once were. Lies stacked on top of lies. When he finally ran out of excuses, he just stood there, breathing hard, eyes searching mine for something. Maybe forgiveness. Maybe weakness. But I didn't have either left. I simply said, "You built your empire on trust, Ronan, and you destroyed it yourself. Don't come here asking for mercy when you've already buried it." He didn't respond, just stared at me like he didn't recognize the man sitting across from him anymore. Then he turned and walked out. No slamming doors this time. Just quiet footsteps fading down the hall like a ghost leaving for good. Later that evening, Alina came by. She looked smaller somehow, like guilt had taken her apart piece by piece. Her eyes were swollen from crying. She whispered my name like it was something fragile. Called her, "Please." I made a mistake. I listened. I really did. But there was nothing left to say. Love doesn't survive betrayal. It just becomes memory. I told her softly. "You and Ronan taught me something valuable. Silence isn't emptiness. It's a choice. And sometimes it's the only answer left." Then I walked away, leaving them both in the ruins they'd built together, and for the first time. The silence felt like peace. Karma doesn't announce itself. It doesn't knock or make noise. It just waits. Quiet, patient, until the moment you've forgotten it exists. Then it arrives, wearing the face of everything you thought you'd escaped. Weeks passed after that confrontation. I didn't check on them, didn't ask, didn't care. My silence wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about distance. I wanted nothing from them, not guilt, not closure, just space to breathe again. But life, it seems, had its own way of closing circles. Ronan's fall wasn't dramatic. It was slow and humiliating, like watching a tower crumble one floor at a time. The investors he'd charmed turned their backs. The company he built on deceit turned into a public scandal. And the same people who once praised him whispered his name with disgust. I heard he tried starting over, pitching new ideas under a different name, but lies don't rebuild what truth has burned. Alina didn't fare much better. When she discovered Ronan had used her too, just another pawn in his self-serving game, she left him. The world she traded love for turned out to be empty. She tried reaching out to me once more, through a long message filled with apologies, regret, and the same old words that once felt sacred. I didn't reply. Sometimes silence is mercy. It saves both sides from saying what can't be unsaid. But here's what no one tells you about karma. It doesn't just punish. It reveals. It strips away masks, leaving people to face the truth of who they really are. Ronan, the confident man who thought he could control everything, ended up alone, broke, forgotten. Alina, the woman who wanted more, lost what was real, chasing what was temporary. As for me, I didn't celebrate their downfall. I didn't smile when I heard. I just felt a quiet finality, like the last page of a book finally closing. Because the truth had spoken for me louder and cleaner than vengeance ever could. And maybe that's what karma really is. Not fire, not fury, not punishment. Just truth. Finally catching up to those who ran from it. By the time it did, I didn't have to say a word. The silence had done all the talking. There's a strange stillness that comes after you've lost everything. A silence that feels both terrifying and comforting at the same time. For weeks I carried it with me, like a shadow that wouldn't let go. The anger had burned itself out, leaving behind only quiet acceptance. I wasn't the same man who once believed love could fix everything. I was someone else now, someone who had looked betrayal in the eye and survived. I spent more time alone after that. Early mornings became my peace. I'd wake before sunrise, make coffee, and sit by the window watching the light slowly paint the world gold. For the first time in months, I could breathe without feeling like the air was too heavy. There was no pretending anymore, no lies to sift through, just me, my thoughts, and the slow process of rebuilding. People say time heals all wounds. I don't think that's true. Time doesn't heal, it teaches. It teaches you how to live with what's broken, how to forgive without forgetting, how to move forward without needing closure. I never forgave Ronan or Alina, but I did forgive myself for trusting too easily, for staying too long, for thinking love was invincible. That was the first real step toward peace. One morning, I drove back to that same overlook where I had sat the night it all happened. The city stretched out beneath me, alive and bright, like nothing had changed, but I had. I remember whispering, I survived the fire. And I meant it. Revenge had given me balance, but forgiveness, not for them, but for myself, gave me freedom. I realized I didn't need to erase the past. It had shaped me, refined me, made me quieter, sharper, stronger. When I left that cliff, I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The chapter was closed, not with a slam, but with a breath. So, if you're listening to this and your world has fallen apart, remember, pain doesn't last forever. It only teaches. Because sometimes peace doesn't come after winning the fight. It comes after you stop fighting altogether and finally let the silence mean something good.